That was
Okay.
great. That
Yeah.
was a good kickoff of this Azure meetup. And I see a lot of questions in the chat. And the good thing is that the chat is also answering the questions instantly. So that's
Nice.
perfect. Um, so I think it is time to invite Scott to the conversation now.
Let's do that.
Hello.
Hi, Scott. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I saw on Twitter that you're doing a series of videos, right?
I felt that there were some things that were not being said when teaching people Git, and I've seen a lot of tutorials on how to use Git, but I don't like them. So when the children are asleep and my wife is working late at the hospital, I figured I would just sit down and record new, fresh tutorials, and people keep asking more questions. So I keep recording more tutorials, and I'm having a good time. Apparently making YouTube videos is my hobby now.
Yeah, it is fun. Yeah, I'm working on it as well, but I'm still starting. Yeah. So, how many videos did you record about Git now?
Well, so far 2 videos in 2 days, but it's
Okay.
part of a larger 5-video series called Things They Didn't Teach You About Computers in School.
Okay, nice. I will definitely check them out when I have some time. In this session, you're going to talk about how you moved your 17-year-old blog to Azure.
I'm in the process of moving it.
Oh,
Exactly.
you're still doing
I'll
it.
show you. I have it in staging right now.
Nice, nice. Do you have enough time? 1 hour, is that enough for your whole story?
I never know. It could be 20 minutes, it could be an hour, but I would appreciate if there are live questions, if either you or Hank would interrupt and share those questions with me, because it propels me forward.
Okay, yeah, we will do that.
I appreciate
Then I won't take any more of your time. Show us.
All right, let's do my best. All right, share screen, sharing screen, and here we go. So we'll pop up this screen here, boom. All right, friends, just an FYI, my name is Scott Hanselman, and you can find me up here at Hanselman.com. And another reminder is that I have a podcast. My last name is Hanselman, like Hansel and Gretel, and my podcast is called Hansel Minutes. And this show has been going on for over 740 episodes. And it's got lots of fresh faces from all over the world talking about technology. Now, all of this stuff that I do is a side hustle. This is not part of my job at Microsoft. Both the podcast at Hansel Minutes and the Hanselman.com main website and the blog are all mini sites, mini websites that are part of my whole company. It's not really a company. And the blog itself is very old. We're looking at 18-year-old software. If I click on the date here and I can zoom in, you see that we've started in 2002. And this software was written in .NET 2.0. And that's quite old and a little bit, a little crusty. It's starting to feel the weight of technology pressing on it. I've been blogging every Tuesday and Thursday for the last almost 20 years. But I notice when I visit some of these URLs that they're ugly. Look at this. It's hard to read. It has an extension. Sometimes people will tease me about these URLs. And that URL shows the technology. It's giving away the technology. It's advertising the technology. And that's not ideal. Also, this old blog is running on a virtual machine, on a VM. And that virtual machine is starting to get old also. So I wanted to move this into the cloud. But I started to realize that some of the decisions that I made 20 years ago when we created this blog were not really modern decisions, modern techniques. This is based on a technology that is called Das Blog, DAS blog. It's German for the blog, Das Blog. And it was originally made by a gentleman named Clemens, and now it's being managed by Mark Downey. Mark Downey and I are moving it to the future. And I wanted to be able to move this website to the new technology, but there's some complications. I'm going to go onto my hard drive here and show you where this content is stored. And you'll notice that this might make you sad. There are almost 5,000 XML files sitting in a folder. Every one of these represents a blog post over the last 20 years or a comment. This is not a database. It's not a very clean or organized way to present information, but it was good in 2002. It's weird in 2020. But it's what I have, so I'm going to use this and try to bring it forward. It's in a folder called Content, right here. And this is another weird decision that we made, because I've got my binaries, my code, and my images, and my scripts, and the content all mixed together in this pile. It's not cleanly separated. That's one problem. It's also using, as I said, an old technology, these ASPX pages. That's ASP.NET active server pages. And that's a technology that a lot of people aren't using. They use ASP.NET Core, which is the latest version of that. So I have a storage problem. I have a language problem. I have an architectural problem. All of this I want to try to solve. I also need to do it in a way that doesn't break any of these existing URLs. So if someone visits this location in the future on the new system, what's going to happen to that URL? Well, right now I have this running in staging. So you see where it says www. I'm going to change that. I'm going to put in the word staging. This is my website, living in Azure. I'll hit enter, and I want you to watch the URL. All right. Now you see that it has a nice changed URL. That's called kebab case, like a shish kebab. And that kebab case is easier to read. It's a nicer style. It's more modern. It also doesn't have that unusual extension there. This here is running on the new software. So that allows me a nice, clean migration path. So that's the first thing that we did. The second thing was looking at the software for Das Blog and deciding what could be brought from 20 years ago and what needed to be rewritten from scratch. I'm going to load up Visual Studio, and we'll look at that code in just a moment here. It's starting on another monitor, and I'm going to bring it over to this monitor. One moment. My computer is working hard. Here we go. Okay. So if you're not familiar with C#, the language that we used for this website has the modern C# that we use in .NET Core, and then some legacy projects. What we found was that we could compile these projects, these older 20-year-old projects, using a thing called the .NET Standard. That allowed us to simply bring 20-year-old code forward, compile it with the new stuff, and then consume it with our new website. So we wrote the website from scratch, but we kept the core engine. That core engine worked very well. And the reason that we didn't rewrite it was that it worked. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Then we have themes. And those themes I'm allowed to change as I like. I'll show you one of those. And this is a .NET technology, but you'll notice that these purple tags, these purple elements, do not look like HTML. Those purple elements are called tag helpers, and they allows us to compose our markup, our code very cleanly. And this meant that I could just copy my existing themes over, and that made the migration a lot smoother. Everywhere that is purple, the custom tag helper. All right. So that was the code. Now let's switch over to the cloud for a moment.
Hi, Scott.
Yes, sir.
Questions are coming in.
Lovely.
So Willem is asking, or is actually curious, how big your code base is.
In lines of code, let's see. Probably several thousands or tens of thousands. It's a non-trivial code base. You can go up and look at that. I don't think I have a measuring thing right now, but we could maybe ask. Let's see. Counting lines of code, command line. There's about 10 different ways to do this. LOC is the tool. And there's a copy on the releases page here. Windows, Windows, Windows. Why not just do it? There we go. So here I'll take this executable and I'll stick it in my utility folder. And then I'll come out to the command line. Let's go over to that folder. 121,000 lines, 40,000 lines of C#, 25,000 lines, 23,000 lines of JavaScript. Razor is considered its own language, even though it's C#. So 43,000 lines and change. There you go. Does that answer that question?
I think so. We will find out in 40 seconds with the delay on the stream.
I see. I'm actually kind of impressed with myself that I was able to find that utility and run it like that.
Really, really good. Then Roland has had another question, and he was asking how you're managing your secrets.
Oh, so secrets are an interesting one. If we go back to the cloud and we look at that, most of those secrets can be put into the Azure configuration. So if we hit a website in Azure and we go into configuration and look at our settings, these are hidden values. There's multiple ways to manage secrets in the cloud, and they're varying levels of secret. If something is really secret, then you put it in a thing called Key Vault. And Azure Key Vault would allow you to have secrets as a service. You ask for the secrets when you need them. For things that are kind of secret, a little bit secret, you can put them in configuration and they'll appear as environment variables. So these are variables that I can pluck out of the environment. And those are about all I need for the secrets I'm using here. Nothing super secret. Remember, there's no database. This is an unusual architecture. So without a database, there's less need for a secret.
Exactly, yeah. And you can also set those secrets for your different environments using Azure DevOps. And
That's
so
a great point. So you're calling out the fact that there's different environments. And in this case, I was looking at staging, right? Staging. I have dev, development, staging, and production as different environments with themselves different secrets. All right, cool. Any other questions, sir?
Oh, they're coming in a lot.
Oh, lovely. Well, let's throw that.
The question here was from Bashir. What is the CI/CD process for this code base like?
All right. So CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment, is an interesting one because there's options. There's two different aspects for that. There's how Mark does it, and he's using Azure DevOps. You can see he's got Linux and he's got Windows. And you can click on those if you wanted to and go and look at that process. And then you've got my stuff, which might be different. So here's Mark doing his inside of Azure DevOps. I will go into my own and show you where that is deploying. Logging in. I've got the main Hanselman website, which we haven't discussed yet, the podcast website, and then the blog itself. Each of these currently is managed inside of Azure DevOps, and it's a very straightforward process. And you can see he's actually created, if I can go and find, there's a, what's it called? What's that thing called, Hank? Pipelines?
The Azure Pipeline.
Azure Pipeline YAML, YML. The YAML files for all of these things exist. If I go to my own GitHub, I'll show you my own, which is here. There we go, Azure Pipelines.yaml. Pretty straightforward. Using Ubuntu, using Linux, picking a version of .NET. One thing that I do that's interesting from a DevOps perspective, and I've written about this on my blog, is I output the build number, the version number of the build. So if you go to something like Hansel Minutes, and we scroll to the very bottom, look at this. It actually says the version and the commit and the build, and then I can click on those, see exactly what code was committed and exactly the moment it happened.
And you're never confused of which version is on.
Never confused, exactly.
Especially when you're developing.
Right, and I've written about that. If you search for Hanselman commit, I'm pretty sure, there we go. Adding a git commit hash and a build ID, and I walk you through the process and how that's done. It's quite clean. It'll take you a couple of hours or an hour, and I walk you through the whole process.
Oh,
that's very, very helpful.
And so I started, what was it? I think a week ago with GitHub Actions. Can you also deploy it the same way with GitHub Actions? Or do you really need Azure DevOps for this?
No, so GitHub Actions has its own support for .NET, and it works just fine. That's the nice thing about doing this work in .NET if you're not familiar with .NET. For example, if I go over to my podcast website, I've got it all running in Docker. So if it runs in Docker, it runs anywhere.
Yep.
So if I say Docker build on my podcast, I'm running a build right now on my local machine. I'm using WSL, the Windows subsystem for Linux, and WSL allows me to have a real Linux environment on Windows. And I'm even running unit tests. So those unit tests are happening. There you go.
So Roland, there is your question answered. They're here.
And I can put that into the cloud. So let's back up. Let's up level for a moment. I had a 20-year-old Windows application. Step one, get it running on Linux, right? Step two, get it running in a container. Step three, put that container in the cloud. And then start thinking about some of those architectural issues that we were mentioning. So this issue I mentioned before about the silly number of files. People may have an opinion about this and feel that this is a bad idea, but in fact, it's the decision that I have made. So what can I do, right? Well, what I was able to do, because I moved this into a container, I think was quite clever. Let's go to configuration, and I'm going to click on path mappings. And this is a really, really important thing for Azure people to think about. If you have an older application that makes an assumption about where it puts things, remember how I was sad that I put all of my blog files in a folder called content? Well, I can remap that folder. I can move that folder and point it to another location. So in this case, my application, my 20-year-old application, doesn't know about the cloud. It's had its path, its location here remapped, moved, and now it points to Azure storage. So it's actually a lie, but it's a friendly lie that makes my application work very well in the cloud. And I didn't have to write any code to do it. I just remapped a path. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. That is really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. I will collect more questions and let you continue with your story. But before I do that, Mohammed asked, how did you got Windows Terminal look so nice?
How did we get the terminal look so pretty? So this is my prompt down here. And when you have a terminal, like Windows Terminal, you can make this look like anything you want. You see it has my name, my computer name, my path. This is called a glyph. This right here is a glyph. It's a special thing called a power line glyph. If you search for Hanselman pretty prompt, I've made a blog post explaining how to get these glyphs. And these are actually built into a font. If you zoom in here, let me zoom. You can see how this background is black and this is a different color of black. So the glyph doesn't look nice, but it shows you that that's actually a character right there. So it's kind of simulating that process. It looks really nice, and it's a combination of fonts and then configuring your prompt. But you'll notice what happens if you don't have the right font. You just get a square. It says, hey, I don't have that character. I don't have that glyph. So the font contains lots and lots of glyphs, and it's called the Powerline glyph. And I walk you through the whole process.
I'm very sorry to interrupt, but we're having some technical issues right now.
Oh.
Okay. Cool. I will continue and we'll do our best. Okay. Cool. So we were talking about the prompt. We were looking at the prompt and seeing the path. And over here, we see the branch for our repository, our source code branch. And then this is an interesting one here. We zoom in on that extra close. What's going on here? We have a +3 that's saying 3 files have been added, 7 files have been changed, and no files have been removed. So that's a status bar. And if I say status, we can see 7 files have been modified. There's 3 potentially new files, and nothing's been removed. If I go to another folder, we can see it turned green, and that's showing me that that's a clean repository. So that is all of the cool information that you get from your prompt there. It makes life a lot easier. Returning back to our podcast site, which is being moved into the cloud as well, I wanted to showcase the fact that I have these scripts. And these scripts are written in PowerShell. And these PowerShell scripts are interesting because PowerShell works on both Windows and Linux. Now this here, I'm going to zoom in again, is the script It's very simple. It just says Docker build. But look at this line right here. If you're not familiar with Linux, you may not recognize that line. This first bit here is called a shebang, S-H-E, bang. And a shebang, the bang is the exclamation point. A shebang is a line of code that tells the operating system how to run that script. What's cool about this is that this first line here tells Linux, I can run that script. Now, how do you run that script on Windows? The extension. I want to juxtapose the extension is used on Windows, the shebang is used on Linux. And that's interesting because it allows me to run these scripts in two different places. And that makes it more flexible for me to deploy this into the cloud. So I can say build, and that worked on Windows. And then I could switch over to Linux and I could run that exact same script because here I also have PowerShell. So this is Linux right here. I can prove it to you, Linux. And this is Windows. And that's important because I want to be able to deploy into the cloud with choice. I want to be able to deploy with choice. And the reason that that's important is that choice saves me money. I'm paying for all of this with my own money, and I don't want to pay more than is necessary. So I have two different server farms in the cloud here. One is Windows and one is Linux. The Linux one costs 30% less, and that 30% less makes a huge difference. So I'm currently in the process of moving my applications to Linux. I have 19 websites in the cloud, 14 on Windows, 5 on Linux. You can see that I've moved them over, and I'm continuing to move them over in order to save money. I think I'll be able to save a lot of money because I can go here and see that only 50% of the memory is being used on that machine, and only about 9% of the CPU of the processor. That means I have headroom. I've got space to grow, and I can put more stuff on that machine, and that's going to make me successful, and it won't cost me any more money, and that's really significant. Oftentimes, we see computers not working hard in the cloud, and I think to myself, you're wasting money. In this case here, I'd like to be able to move everything over to Linux and pay as little as possible, and that's important. Now, this dashboard that we saw on the home page is a dashboard that shows me everything that's happening on my websites right now. I can see how many users are live right now on my website. And more interestingly, I can see the response time. I can see these little spikes. Usually my response time is a few milliseconds, but every once in a while it hits 20 milliseconds. That might be something I'd want to explore. But for the most part, my site runs well and it doesn't have too much of an issue. And I'm able to run 19 websites for a couple $100, which is pretty sweet. And I won't have to wait to pay any more. And you'll look right here, the Linux part of the website is really only $43. So I feel like I'm getting a good value because I'm working the computers as hard as I possibly can. Currently, the thing that's keeping me from switching my main system over to the new system is probably fear. I've got about 5,000 blog posts and a lot of information, and I just want to keep testing. So for example, we look at this URL again, the old style. I want to change that URL to say staging, hit enter. And you notice we switched to kebab case. It seems to be working, but I need to test it under load. I need a lot of people to hit this machine and see if it will hold up before I'm ready to switch over. When I do switch over, this staging is going to change and become production. It'll become www. When I do that, we'll be using a thing that's called Azure Front Door. Luke Meger is asking, are you using container orchestration for your containers? I'm not using any container orchestration yet. What I'm doing right now is primarily just using Azure App Services, and I'm using Azure Front Door. The front door is literally the front door for your website. Somebody knocks on the front door, and then we tell them where to go. So in this case, someone hits staging, they are sent to the blog, and then depending on what URL they hit, they are routed to the correct location. Azure Front Door is a little bit expensive. You could also use Cloudflare, and Cloudflare is a similar front door for your website. But I have found this to be quite helpful. And it's allowed me to test my website. So if I hit staging, that's the home page for staging. But you can see I still have a few problems where it says not secure, right? So I need to think about my certificates to make sure that I get that nice lock that we all expect to see. For example, I would have preferred that that lock appear on its own and I would get a redirect. Here I'm getting it, but there's a little bit of a bug there. I'm trying to fix those small bugs by looking at the rules inside of Front Door and trying to enable them. But I'm still not quite there yet. And you'll notice it's giving me some warnings. But yeah, I am not using container orchestration. So that's a good question. Maybe Hank will see if we have any other questions in the chat. One of the things, Sukje is asking, is Front Door better than Application Gateway for this application? That's a good question. Let's find out. So Front Door on Azure versus Azure Application Gateway. Notice how Google auto-completed that. The reason that I wanted to Google for this is I wanted to show you that when you have a question and you say versus this versus that, and Google completes it for you, it means it's a good question because other people have asked the same question. If you go to the frequently asked questions for Front Door, there's actually a section here that says, what's the difference between the two? The fundamental difference is that Front Door is global and Application Gateway is regional. I wanted to go and do this at a global scale. I wanted anyone in the world to hit my website. So that's why I have moved all of that to Azure Front Door. However, Front Door doesn't work at a container level. So if I were to have multiple websites all over the world and I wanted to drain one of them of connections, I wanted to slowly have someone get off of that website and move to another. Front Door is not good for that. So people tend to use them together. You would put the Application Gateway behind Front Door. But again, we have to ask ourselves, how much money do we have? Since I'm one person running one website and I only have $100, I don't want to spend a lot of money here. You're also asking, am I planning on documenting this transformation? That is a great question. I have been documenting that for a very long time. And unfortunately, the process has been happening now for almost a year. And again, I want to say it's because of fear that is preventing me from just turning the switch. I need to work through that fear, but I'm a little bit concerned that I'm going to break something. But I am working on that. One other thing I wanted to point out was the benefits of using a CDN, Content Distribution Network. These images that I have, and I have a lot of them, take up many gigabytes of space. So if we go to Hansel Minutes, for example, and we look at our episodes, these faces all come from a certain location. And if I go to this page and I scroll, you see there's hundreds of them. It turns out that this is a very heavy page. This is like a 10 megabyte page. An easy way for me to make this both lighter weight and also faster for my users is to put these on content distribution networks. So if I right click, you'll notice my URL says images dot whatever. That points to a CDN, and that means that those images are going to be given to my users from a location that is close to them. So if you're in Japan, you'll get that image served to you from Japan. That's thing number one. The second thing is, if I scroll fast, I'm going to just scroll fast one moment here. Watch. See the gray? That's because I only load images that appear inside the browser. I don't load the entire page until they enter the page. That also saved me money and got things working a lot faster. So that's something else to think about. These are all small things, but it saved a lot of money. Another question coming in here, what CDN am I using in Azure? If you go to CDN or Content Distribution Network profile, I'm using the standard Microsoft one. There's other options as well. I just picked the cheapest one. Again, I don't want to pay any money if I can avoid it. And when I picked that CDN, you'll notice my endpoints. And in this case, there's my custom website domain. So that's worked out really well. One of the interesting things about this entire process is that I'm just one person. But as I show you all of this, it feels like there's a whole team. And that's the thing that I find so exciting about the cloud, is the idea that we have power, even though we are one person. A 1 or 2 person shop has the power of a global network, as if there were 10 people working on this thing. A question from Jorit. Isn't Front Door a CDN as well? It is a kind of a CDN, yes, and it does cost a little bit more. It's about choice. You can pick one. Sangeeta is saying, when you update the content after migrating, what will the update look like? It's a good question. I use an application called Windows Live Writer, and Windows Live Writer is just a blogging tool. It calls an endpoint in my application, and it will just make XML files. It will make one of these. And when it makes that file, the blog will update. So I will switch over to staging. I'll make that become www. Let me rephrase. Staging will become production. And then when that happens, it should just redirect everyone to the new stuff. So have I faced any issues yet? Not yet, but we'll see. As I said, I'm a little bit afraid, so I've just been running it in staging for now. These are really good questions. Any other questions, my friends? Hank, you want to jump in and join me here as we end the hour?
Yes, of course. We had the last question, right? How updating the content look like?
Yes, it should just work exactly the same as before. This tool here calls a web service, and you can see these are the last few blogs that I wrote, and this is a front end client that lets me talk to my blog, and I'll just continue to use it, and it'll point to the same location as before.
Nice. So I think maybe it is good to share a Git trick, what you've been talking about in your videos.
Oh, yes. So if we go
or
to...
maybe even show how you can rename a branch, which is a hot topic at the moment.
Well, if we go to my my YouTube, I have a playlist that's called Computer Stuff They Didn't Teach You. I'm going to skip this ad here. There we go. There's me last night. And I talk about a number of different things, and the last 2 have been about Git basics and Git pull requests. So I talk about those issues in those 2 videos. They're quite short. They're somewhat short, but they're very dense. There's a lot of information there. So I would encourage you to check those out. And if you're interested in renaming your branches, I've written an article about how to rename your branches if that makes you happy. So lots of stuff. Basically, go to my blog and explore, because there's a ton of content up there.
Nice. And then when is the new version going to be live?
I don't know. Again, I've said it before. I'm nervous. I need a vacation weekend, and then maybe I'll use that weekend to go the final moment, the final step.
Yeah. Let's add.
Is the final architecture good? Yes, the final architecture has held up because I had unit tests. It's gone well.
That is cool. So everyone that is watching the stream can win some Lego today. So,
Lego?
Yeah, Lego. We have a sponsor, Squared Up. It's a company in London, or in the UK. I don't know if they're in London. They're in the UK. And they've given us, like, 5 Star Wars boxes to share. And I can put an image, this one. And the thing you have to do for that is to collect all the secrets that are going through the bottom of the stream. So we already had one at Dawood. We have one I'm just going to show you now really quickly. Have you seen it? And there is going to come up next one during the talk from Carol. Sjoukje, do we have more questions for Scott?
There's one more question from Luke. Do you go further with sentiment analysis on this blog?
I don't go through and look at the comments and look at their sentiment. I mean, it's a blog. I don't think it needs machine learning. I suppose I could do that, but right now it's just a 20-year-old diary.
Okay, fair.
Sure.
If you're planning on going live, I think we all would love to help you and test your blog.
I'm sure you would all happily hit my blog and make it knock over with traffic. But yeah, I'll come asking soon once I figure this whole process out.
Okay. It looks very great. Using a lot of great services. Really, really awesome.
Trying to make it work and have it save money.
Yes. That's the end goal of it. Yeah. Nice.
Cool. Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here and for this interesting session.
Cool.
Thank you. Yes, and then we're a little bit ahead of time now. So I think we can just start with the session if Carol is there. I will remove Scott's screen. So this is your last chance to ask questions in the chat for Scott. We will have to give them 40 seconds because that is the delay on the stream. Okay. But in the meanwhile, we can invite Carol in the stream.
Hi.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So that was a nice Azure Thursday, I think.
Definitely. Yeah.
And that's the good thing of being online. We can have some speakers we normally would have never gotten on our local meetups.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, we really had some great speakers. All 3 of them. Yeah.
Yes. So then I think the moment is almost here that we are going to close the form. I will show it for the last time on the screen.
Exciting.
So you can get your submissions in. And hopefully you've seen all the 3 codes.
They weren't very hard to miss, right?
Yeah, unless you were doing something else and not paying
Yeah.
attention.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And the form is closed. And I have a list of people that submitted. I'm going to share my screen.
Ooh.
Do that with audio. A wheel of names. Let me download this from our chat. Now I'm pasting all the names that came in. You can all see your name. And if you see any duplicated one, that is not good. So we press shuffle a few times. And then we can pull the wheel.
Ooh.
Yay! I thought it was going to make sound. So the first winner is Gopal, and it's on the list, and we will contact you by email in, I think, in an hour.
Congratulations.
That one is removed from the list, so let's do the next one.
Who will it be?
Yay.
Awesome. Congratulations with your prize.
Yes.
Awesome.
How much do we have? 5, right?
Yeah, we have 5.
Okay. 3 more chances.
Yeah.
Oh. Yes.
Woo! Paula, congratulations.
And on the list. Milan.
Wow.
Congratulations. And the last one.
Yeah.
Arno.
Congratulations, Arno.
Cool. Let me save this list here. Put it in the chat for us. So congratulations, all these things. I think Square Up is going to contact you for your shipping details, and we'll ship it to you. So let's go back.
To all of you.
Do we have any final words to close today's show here?
I think it's difficult. We had so much great info and sessions and presentations. I'm very happy with this live stream. Yeah.
Yes, me too, except for the stream crashing.
Yeah.
But that only was because I found out why. So we're all technical and we're all running Azure. So it would be great to share that. So we were running Azure Media Services. And Azure Media Services of course, works almost the same as YouTube. You send video in, and that will transform it for you, so you can play it in multiple formats in a player. So you have a streaming endpoint for that, and you have to scale them. So you came with way too many people for my scaling setting to handle it. So it is all up to me. I should have dragged the bar a little bit further. But I think the great thing about Azure Media Services is that it comes out of the box with real-time captions. It can caption in English, in French, in Spanish, and like a lot of different languages.
And you can also see resolution. That is a great thing as well.
Yes. So for next month, I'm going to find out, so you get per default a higher resolution and you can scale it back. And that it will not crash. I will just scale it up a little bit more. So that was it for me.
So we will not give up on Azure Media Services yet.
No, absolutely not.
Okay, cool.
I love the subtitles. Cool.
And are we going to have Billy the next time? Next time again?
Yeah, I think it is great. And I think it's really great to make these streams more accessible and make it available for every audience. So
Yeah.
I'm going to invite him back. So Billy, for you, it is every first Thursday of the month around this time.
Yes.
Perfect.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Yeah, then that's it for today. And I hope to see you all next week, or next month, not next week.
Yes. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.